Leavenworth Board of Zoning Appeals. Monday, 18 December meeting to order. We do have a quorum. And I'll entertain, you've had a chance to look at the minutes of the November 27 meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes unless someone has some corrections or discussion about the minutes.
Sir, I make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Okay, I have a motion, and do I have a second?
I second.
Any discussion?
No, sir.
Nope.
Nope.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. And we have an application for a variance. And staff report, please.
Okay, thank you. This is a request for a variance at 2205 South 4th Street. Kevin Albee, who owns the property, is requesting variance from section 8.15 of the development regulations to allow the use of an existing non-conforming sign after a change in tenant. The development regulations do require that for an existing non-conforming sign, if there's a change in business ownership, tenant, name, or type of business, that the sign be replaced or modified to become conforming. The sign in question is the freestanding sign that's been on the property for about 40 years or so, I think, according to Mr. Albee. You're all familiar with it. It's the A&D Hearing Center there at the corner of 4th and Marion. Right, the way the property is laid out now, it lies outside of the property. It's actually within the 4th Street right-of-way. You can kind of see it on the aerial photo up there. Between the property line and the street. Somewhere between about 15 to 20 years ago, KDOT came through 4th Street, as you're probably aware, is a state highway. KDOT came through and acquired additional right-of-way. We're not sure exactly when that happened. We know it did happen. So when this sign was put in, it would have been conforming with the regulations at the time. It would have been well within the property lines. Once KDOT came through and acquired all that additional right-of-way, it now lies outside of the property lines through no actions of the property owner. In the last few years, we have had a couple of these requests that have been before the Board of Zoning Appeals for the same situation. The two that we've had were for Tipsy's Liquor and Pure Vape, which are just north of here on the other side of 4th Street. Same thing, their existing monument signs ended up in the right-of-way after KDOT came through and acquired that additional right-of-way. So Mr. Albee is looking for the variance so that when he gets another tenant, he's got 2 tenant spaces in here, so that when he leases out that currently vacant tenant space, that tenant can come in and get a permit to have a tenant panel on the sign, since right now we would not be able to issue that permit since the sign is not conforming. So if you have any questions for me about that, I can answer them, or Mr. Albee is here also and he can answer questions for you as well.
No, sir, I have no questions.
Questions of staff?
I don't have any questions.
I do have a question,
Shoot.
but I'm not sure it's specifically related to this sign. But
Okay.
I'm just curious, when did we get into the business of directing sorry, let me come back to it. It said, there was a statement in there, any maintenance cost, repair, or alteration on such sign is not to cost more than 25% of the current value of sign based on the date of the alteration or repair. Why do we care how much it costs?
So what that's saying is, if you're doing basic maintenance, that wouldn't require a variance to do maintenance on an existing non-conforming sign. If you're doing more than basic maintenance, you're going to be changing the structure of it, that's going to require variance for that sign.
Okay.
So, and that's pretty standard in other cities that I've seen. I'm not sure how long this specific provision's been in there, but that's a lot of times how you handle nonconformities is that once you cross a threshold of value for that, now you're no longer just maintaining it, you're replacing it essentially. And so that's kind of why those thresholds get set.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, I have one other question, since we've been in the sign business now for a few years. When a new tenant comes in, does the new tenant have to come and get a variance to put their sign up in the blank spot?
Nope.
Just sign permit?
Yep, they would get their standard tenant panel permit is what we call it. So yeah, the variance is for the sign.
The
So now
sign being
anything
there.
that goes on, like a new tenant or, whatever panel they're gonna put on there will be allowed, should the board decide to approve this variance request.
So essentially, we're just approving the structure
Yes.
of the sign.
Correct.
Any other questions generated by that?
No, I appreciate your asking that
Hearing
question.
none,
That's a good one.
I'll open the public hearing for BZA 2023-35. And someone here to speak with us?
I am Kevin Albee, the person who's put in for the variance. I did want to state, I did initially, when I found out there was an issue, went with a Young Sign Company, how do we fix this? We were going to look at moving the sign, several options. The current property line of the property is about 3 feet from the front of the building.
Yeah, there's.
So short of putting the sign on top of the building,
Yeah.
there's no way to bring it into compliance. So I did attempt to modify it first, but we can't do that.
And you don't want to do that either?
No, not really. And I was informed by Young Sign, and I don't know if it's the fact that you guys wouldn't approve a sign on the top of a building anyway.
True.
So my option is not have a sign, leave the sign the way it is, or find a way to get tenants to be able to use the upper half of the sign, which is currently just a blank sheet.
Okay.
And I would state too that the location of the sign doesn't provide any sort of hindrance in terms of vision for traffic coming in and out of the parking lot.
Now, when the state took a few more feet of right-of-way, was that also in conformity to when they widened the turn there to the east, or was that the city that was widening?
The city did that, let me get zoomed back out here a little bit. So, it's hard to see, this area up here is a separate lot from Mr. Albee's building, there used to be a doctor's office there.
Yeah.
The city purchased that,
Oh.
so that they could make these intersection improvements, but no, KDOT had acquired that additional right-of-way years before.
Okay.
They expanded the road like 5 feet on a side to make
Yeah.
the lanes better.
When was that, do you remember?
It was I know I was in the building, I've been here since 91, so sometime between 91 and now,
Okay.
and I'm thinking probably 10 years after I was in, so like she said, between 15
Yeah.
and 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I recall something happened.
Yeah, that's kind of our best guess as
Yeah.
to when that happened.
Okay, does anyone have any more questions?
I did have a question.
Yes.
So, after finding out what happened with KDOT and expanding the road, which took away some of the property line, I mean, is it customary for, let's say, the city of Leavenworth or other cities, when they notice something like that happens, that they modify their rules to help grandfather in certain businesses that were affected by that?
So essentially, grandfathered means it's existing non-conforming. So when KDOT changed that right-of-way, all of the signage and some of the buildings with their setbacks and stuff became existing non-conforming. And so the purpose of a variance is, there may be cases where it's appropriate or reasonable for that nonconformity to stay, or there may be in instances where it's not appropriate due to the road having been widened, and so now a sign is in the way, and it could stay there until they're ready to change it, but now that you're changing it, we need to go ahead and get that out of the way because it's a safety hazard. So, yeah, so any of what was there was allowed to stay. It was essentially grandfathered, but yeah, the time to review it then comes when they're ready to make a change, just so that gives some oversight to make sure that it's still an appropriate location for that sign.
Does the variance go with the property, or does the variance go with the owner?
It goes with the property.
Okay.
So if this property were to change hands later on,
Yep, that variance is already in place, so if Mr. Albee were to sell it and you were to buy it, that variance would still be in place and you could use that existing sign.
Okay. Any other questions?
No other
If
questions?
not, I'll close the public hearing. And a request for variance may be granted upon the finding of the board that all of the following conditions have been met. The board shall make a determination on each condition, and the findings shall be entered in the record. So, the first condition is that a variance requested arises from such condition which is unique to the property in question and is not ordinarily found in the space in the same zone or district, and is not created by an action or actions of the property owner.
I agree.
You agree?
I agree.
You agree?
And I agree.
Okay. That the granting of...
Or were you gonna vote, Dick?
Yes, I have.
Oh, did you? Okay, sorry, I didn't hear you.
I agree. That the granting of the permit for variance will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
That the strict application of the provisions of the development regulations from which the variance is requested will constitute unnecessary hardship upon the property owner represented in the application.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
And I agree.
That the variance desired will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
That granting of variance desired will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of the development regulations.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
In granting of variance, the board may impose such conditions, safeguards, and restrictions upon the premises benefited by the variance as may be necessary to reduce or minimize any potentially injurious effect of such variance upon other property in the neighborhood and to carry out the general purpose and intent of the development regulations. Does anyone have anything?
I do not.
I do not.
I do not.
I do not. So this variance is approved.
Yep.
And granted.
Yep. And we have no other business for tonight. We do have a meeting on January 22nd. So everyone have a good Christmas and
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And
That's the fourth Monday.
happy concert.
Yes, and so I